Okay, so welcome. Today's class is, we'll need a brick or you can use a stack of books. I've had students use cooking pots. Anything that is solid will give you a little bit of height off of the floor. It doesn't really matter how high it is, so don't worry if you don't have a yoga brick. Anything at all will work. Today's practice is going to be focused on leg rotations and movements, abduction, adduction. So the block gives us a nice way to clarify what we're doing with each leg. So we'll just leave this to the side and start our practice standing, just playing with the feet. And rolling the ankles and the toes. What we're really doing while we're playing with the feet is bringing our attention into the body, feeling the sensations, the stretch of the toes, the rolling of the ankle, up into the shins, up into the thighs, into the core. And how the action in the legs changes the way we carry the hips, the core, the spine, the breath. So, just to make sure we're all on the same page, terminology-wise, internal rotation is pigeon-toed, knocking the knees and the toes in. External rotation is kind of plie stance, knees and toes out. And then neutral is so you've got kind of the best of both. Ideally like you're skiing straight down a hill. If that hurts your body for some reason, if you're more naturally externally rotated, that's fine. Make sure your knees are happy before you force any alignment. Well, hopefully neutral is good for you. I'm going to spread through the feet, really ground down. And just close the eyes as I swivel the palms open, lift through the back of the throat. And start to establish awareness of the whole body. Seeing that all these anatomical points that we're going to talk about are links in a chain. You can't really dissect one part of the body from the other. Not in living tissue. Anyway, so grounding the feet, lifting through the throat, and just seeing the whole organic whole breathing. Getting taller as you continue to examine how you're carrying the spine. And really starting to mobilize the breath through the ribs as you stabilize the muscles around the hips. Low belly, low back, and pelvic floor. My palms are open and the fingers really start to reach down as much as the neck and the head climb up towards the ceiling. So you're feeling a broadness across the collarbones, gentle activation in the shoulders, hopefully some lift through the upper back, through the neck, through the head. And from this place of awareness, I'm going to open the eyes. And I'm going to take the palms up, biceps up on my way up. Lace the grips as you reach overhead. Shift into the right foot and just play with tree pose. So if balance isn't there yet, you can use your little toe like a kickstand. You might step low. You might step higher if your hip will let you. I'm not going to grab my foot and bring my ankle in, even though I could probably step a little higher. I'm just going to see how far I can actively bring my foot up towards the thigh. And just find balance here. Soft gaze. Ideally, if you want to challenge your somatic awareness, your proprioception, you might even play with closing the eyes. Challenging, as we've only just started practice. Some days I'm really solid with the eyes closed, some days I'm not. But the point is to switch gears, whether you stabilize there or not. It's that skill. And bring the hands back down, pedal off the legs. Good. So I'm going to ground. I'm going to sweep palms up, biceps up, reach up nice and tall. Load into the other foot, spin the knee off. Maybe a little kickstand on the floor, maybe stepping low. See how high you can activate your leg as you gather your foot up towards your thigh. And finding balance as you press down. Feeling those actions in the legs. Drifting towards eyes closed, even if it's only just blinking for a moment or two. Just touching off that scale. If you gotta pop your eyes open again, no problem. If you fall over, great, start again. One more breath. And bring it down. And release out. Good. So here's where we're gonna play with the block. So I'm going to take the block in front of me, and I'm going to step. So I stood on my left foot for 2 the first time, so I'm going to step my left foot onto the block. And if you have a really big foot, your toes can kind of hang 5, and make sure the ball of the big toe joint has solid surface and the heel has a solid surface. I'm going to push down and just find balance here, and not to worry too much about rotation or where I am in space. In fact, even just move around and play. So I'm going to kick forward and back and circle the arms and just kind of goof around and play with where you are. And come back and switch. So just experimenting, grounding big toe and heel, push and peel. And just playing, moving around the room, feel where you are in space. And bring it back down. Let's come back to your first leg. So I'm going to step. I'm going to be more focused this time. So now I'm going to flare the foot, kicking the heel. You can keep your arms out for balance. You can bring them to the hips just so you know you're real square. I'm just going to start with external rotation, internal rotation on the free leg. And in order to keep the hips square, my standing hip is doing the work as well. So you'll feel as this leg floats out, there's a little hug on this side to stabilize. You just don't see the action because you're bearing your weight down through that leg. So this is a nice example of open chain and closed chain. And we'll just go ahead and switch. So I'm going to step up onto my right foot, find balance, establish, square the hips, and just externally rotate, internally rotate. Notice that the movement is all coming from the hip socket. My toes are moving because it's all one unit. I'm rotating from the head of the femur. And come back down. So I'm going to come back to the first leg. Now it gets a little more interesting, so I'm going to step and stabilize. I'm going to flare that foot. Now we're going to eliminate rotation, and it's just abduction. So notice how the toes are pointing forward. If I allow this to happen, I'm rotating. Notice how it turns my whole body. So in order to keep the hips square, I'm going to kick the heel out, abduction, and then I'm going to bring it in front. Really squeeze the thighs together. See, can you cross it in front of you? Clean abduction, so A-B, abduction, and then abduction, like you're adding to midline. That's how I always remember it. Abduct behind you. Abduction. Both legs are going to know about it. Adduction. So we've got closed chain action here to stay tall. An open chain action as that leg is free to float out with those muscular actions. And I'm just kind of zigzagging across the room, exploring the strength in my hip, exploring the core stability. I like to open the arms out here for a little bit of balance. If you want to be a little more finessed with core control, you can keep the hands at the hips. And we'll switch sides. So stepping, establishing, high five the foot, keep it neutral. So now we're eliminating rotation. We know what it is. I'm going to eliminate rotation. I'm going to kick the heel out, abduction, really stomp down. There's tons of work in this hip, even though you don't see any chain or any change because it's that closed chain action. The free leg, the free chain is free to abduct, abduct, add into midline, abduct, abduct as it moves away from midline. And really starting to create some mindful, slow, controlled heat. Maybe arms are out to create balance, and once you kind of get it going, bring your hands back to center line. Knowing where your pelvis is always useful. There will be a little bit of shimmy with the movement of that leg, but I'm going to keep it as neutral as possible. Good. And then this movement I got from Katie Bowman. Check her out, Katie Bowman. I'll put a link in the notes. She's got great movements. So this is one of her movements. I'm not going to take credit for it. So I'm going to step back up onto my left leg. I'm going to flare my foot. And now with my hands on my hip sockets, I know where neutral is. Now we're deliberately going to slouch down. So I'm going to point out what's going on. Notice that my standing knee is straight. So this is not like stepping a staircase. Both knees are straight. But what happened is my floating hip kind of dropped below neutral. And there's that bumping out my standing hip, so I can feel a little stretch here. If your foot lands on the floor, fine. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Depends on how tall your object is. And then I'm going to drive, activating my standing hip to bring me back to center. I'm going to melt, slouching, bumping out that hip, and then drive and step. The first week I started doing this, I felt amazing awareness and massaging, releasing into my standing hip. Real interesting study. So relaxing into that, dropping the external rotators, dropping the abductors, and driving and reigniting. So real deep awareness in that standing hip socket. And just notice that my thigh is dropping below neutral, or the hip is dropping below neutral and coming back to neutral. I'm not raising it above neutral, so that's scrunching the waist, which is not what I'm trying to do. So I'm just dropping below and then coming back to that neutral line. And switch sides. So I'm going to step, I'm going to find balance, set the foot, both knees stay straight. So the action is coming from the standing hip socket as I relax those stabilizers and feel a little stretch bumping out the hip. And then push, square back to neutral, melt, and push, square back to neutral. So the glutes, the rotators, there's a lot going on here. And really depending on how you're put together and what muscles are your default go-to muscles, you could be activating differently here. So some of it's behavioral, some of it's genetic. But generally speaking, glute medius and minimus, and some of the abductors, some of the rotators, will be activating here. You might notice a little difference from side to side, changes in sensations like being right-handed or left-handed. The intention with these is to become aware of our asymmetries, not discouraged by them. You're kind of creating balance by integrating these two different hemispheres. They're never going to be the same geometrically. And then come back up. Good. So you can kind of salsa off a little bit. Leave the block off to the side for now. Good. And we spent all of our time down in the legs. So head towards the back of your mat. You've got nice neutral activation. Push down. Sweep palms up, biceps up on your way up. Palms face each other as you reach overhead. And just lift and drop your heels a few times, waking up the action in the feet more specifically. So hips, thighs, core, nicely awake. Balance is nicely awake. From here, come right up on the tippy toes. See, can you balance right up on the balls of the feet, lifting up through the ankle as high as you can, like you're up on stilettos. Up through the back of the throat, sparky fingers. All that balance and awareness, hopefully helping you feel nice and plugged in here, making sure you're not holding your breath. Keep this upward spark as you drop your heels. Keep this upward spark as you sit and sink into lightning pose. Curl the bum under a little bit. It's like your hamstrings are actively pulling you down into your squat. Glance and make sure your knees and your toes are pointing in the same direction. Up through the upper body, back down into those legs. 3, 2, 1. Waterfall down, hands to the floor, wiggle it out. Nod your head yes. Shake your head no. Loop the shoulders around. Keep the feet as neutral as possible. So I'm going to ground and really get extra heavy with my heels and my toes. The knees don't have to be straight. If they are, they are. If they're bent, they're bent. But I'm going to spider both hands over to the left-hand side, so I drop any tension in the outer right hip and breathe into the right-hand side. And then come back and spider both hands over to the right, and I keep those feet equally grounded. And as you twist away from your left-hand side, you're starting to stretch the left-hand side. I'm going to breathe into the left-hand side. And come on back to neutral, and we'll walk out into downward dog. As you drop the head and pedal off the legs. And then from here, we'll come on down to all fours. Now warm up the hands just briefly, flipping over the front of the hand, back of the hand. Every time I'm doing any kind of planking or dogs or body weight stuff on the floor. It's nice to at least say hello to the wrists. Getting tactile and mobile and feeling in. And from here, set the hands under the shoulders, really push down, the neck is nice and long. We'll do a similar experiment from what we did standing now on all fours, and just notice how it feels different with our new relationship with gravity. So I'm going to take my right leg back, flare through the foot, kick the heel back, the head reaches forward, activating. I'm going to lift my belly just as much as I'm lifting the legs. So there should be a little kind of arm wrestling match between lifting the core and lifting the leg. And from here, I'm going to externally rotate, internally rotate. Just feeling how both hips have to respond to this action. There's a challenge in keeping that long leg fully extended and static, as the hip on the floor here is what rolls you open. So feel those external rotators working hard to externally rotate you. And then come back to center. And we'll switch sides. So I'm taking the left leg back, really kick the heel, flare the toes, stomp, head reaching forward as you press, hug up through the belly. Externally rotate, internally rotate. There's a lot of little things to multitask here as I watch the breath, the length of the spine, the action through the arms, that long leg swiveling open and closed. And bring it down. And now, so kind of a different little action here. I'm going to reach the head forward, push down, take my right leg back, and now, just like I did when we were standing, I'm going to eliminate any rotation. So my belly is truly square the whole time, and the toes are truly pointing at the floor the whole time. But I'm just going to squeeze my flying leg through midline, and then take it out to the side, but don't let any rotation happen. Adduct in, abduct out to the side, toes are still pointing at the floor, glute medius really heating up with that. Squeeze it in, squeeze it in, squeeze it in. How far can your heel, if my right heel is in the air, how far can it reach to the left? And then bring it out to the side. Keep the arms strong. There's some good heat generating in the posterior and in the hips now. And release it down. I'm going to sink to child's pose, partly to just seesaw and relax the hips, but also to kind of sprinkle the fingers out nice and wide and goof around with the shoulders and the elbows and the neck a little bit. And come on up to all fours. And we'll take the second side. So setting a long core, pushing down. I'm going to take the left leg back, sparky toes pointing exactly at the floor, belly square pointing exactly at the floor. And I'm just going to squeeze that leg in and squeeze it out. Really making sure that the hips don't spin open. That's losing the work. So just like separating rotation from abduction when we were standing on the block, now that we're in a different relationship with gravity, it's harder to keep the leg lifted off the floor. So we're lighting up the glutes and the hamstrings, spinal muscles a little more. Make sure you keep that counter conversation with the belly lifting up as well. Good. Eventually, coming back down, both knees on the ground, sink back to child's pose, both to kind of tick-tock the hips from side to side and soften, glute medius, and friends. I'll bring the hands out, move up the shoulders, rolling through the spine. So we'll all meet up in downward dog. And pedal off the legs, drop the head, spread the shoulders. Alright, so from this dog, you're going to lift your heels, come up on the big toes, really curl the belly under, roll the bum under. So the glutes and the core are activated. I'm going to push the floor, round up. So we do kind of a rounded up plank, not a neutral plank. High plank or gymnast hollow body. I'm going to reach forward, lifting through the back of the throat and just holding this plank for a couple of breaths. Making sure you're happy here. Spreading your awareness from head to toe, everything activates. Leaning into the wrists as much as is reasonable for you. If you can get more than 90 degrees, great. If not, that's cool too. And then dive back to your dog. Keep that overhead pressing action, but let everything else wiggle out. And from here, I'm going to make sure my feet are generously wide. It might be a little wider than your usual dog. I'm going to come up onto the tippy toes, roll the belly, zip and curl forward, curl forward, curl forward. Surf into that nice lifted high plank, curl the hips under. And from here, either stay or deepening the work, I'm going to take up my right leg, I'm going to keep the belly square, head reaching forward. And just like we did in all fours, without any rotation, I'm going to squeeze that leg to midline and take it out to the side. And yet drive forward into the wrist. This is challenging. I've got a little shiver and shake, but I'm still breathing and I'm welcoming the heat. I'm using the breath like air conditioning. You might stay longer than me or you might come down earlier. I'm going to go ahead and switch sides. So I'm going to set my plank push down, take the left heel up, high five the foot, squeeze it in, and take it out. Now I'm not going to count reps for you because you may do more or less than me, but you're going to stay as long as you can keep a good quality of movement. And release it down, press back to dog, wiggle it out. And roll down to kneeling. I'm going to take puppy pose for a second. Hands are going to go wide towards the edges of the mat. Roll the biceps up. If you feel that your shoulders get really stuck here, you could go thumbs and index fingers up so the blades of the pinkies are on the mat. Or roll the shoulders open. Maybe it's forehead on the floor. Maybe looking forward, chin and heart towards the floor. Another nice option here, I'm going to actually grab the top of the mat, grab a big fistful of mat and stretch it away as I open into the rib cage. Take advantage of all those heated planks to kind of wiggle some space into the upper body. And zip. Peel up, peel up, peel up, reel the hands in, and lift back up to a downward dog. Now I'm going to take the feet a little wide, and roll up onto the tippy toes, zip and curl forward. So again, this is a wide stance plank. I'm going to take both heels to the right and take my left arm up as I set up a side plank. So my bottom leg, my right leg, is abducting against the floor. My front leg is adducting, so I'm on the blades of my feet, using an inner thigh and an outer thigh on purpose. Pivot back down and just lean forward. Pivot your heels. Beep, all the way around. Put the blades of the feet down, push down. Notice how I'm squeezing my glutes forward a little bit. A lot of times we want to sit back. So drive the hips forward a little bit. And as you spread the arms across the room, feel the outer line of the left side and the inner line of the right side. And pivot back down and pedal off. So options to deepen that and play with it, and then we'll head onward. So I'm going to roll up onto the tippy toes, zip and curl forward, a little wide-legged plank, throat reaching forward. Take your heels to the right. Peel up, so you're on the outer blade of your right foot. And again, I'm not sitting back. Squeeze your bum forward, sharpen it up, open the chest. My front foot is going to stack up, so all I have now is the outer line of the right side working. And then if you wish to deepen it, you can take this leg up as well. Notice how I'm still driving the outer blade of the foot, so I'm going to try not to let that happen. Keeping it neutral for now. And bring it back down, pivot around. So I'm going to separate my feet, come back to a wide plank. Take both heels to the left, take the right arm up, spread the shoulders. Use your glutes to press the hips square, try not to sit back. First option is to stack, right leg on left, and maybe levitate through the blade of the foot. You've got clean abduction. And bring it down, pivot back around, and wiggle off your dog. Roll forward plank all the way down to the floor. We haven't done any spinal extensions, any upward dogs yet. So first, I'm going to spread the fingers out, tuck the chin, forehead on the floor, kind of play and explore the shoulders a little bit. Pulling the toes down the back of the mat as you press. Loop the shoulders together and down your back. Gently peel your face up off the floor. Fingers pulling. Take a couple of breaths here, exploring that lift through the spine, and exhale, melt down. Inhale, peel. Gentle pull through the fingers as you lift the heart, and melt down. Keeping the legs engaged behind you. So I'm not trying to lift the spine while I belly flop. Glutes are awake, lower belly's awake, quads are awake. Just rising and falling with each breath. Then peel it up. Bring your thumbs in close down by the ribs. Grip and pull, grip and pull, grip and pull. Start to rise up into your upward dog energy up through the thighs. Nice long throat as you pull through. You can look left and right without feeling any grip in the neck. Then gently look down, zip and hug. Pause here in a pointed plank. So notice I'm on the toes, I'm really pushing the floor, really hugging up through the belly, bum curls under, lean into the wrists if you can, a little bonus work if you have an upside down practice. 3, 2, 1, and continue on your way back, flip over the toes. From this downward dog, take your right leg up. So keep it neutral, keep it sparky, keep your belly square to the floor. Just lift and drop your left heel. This should feel really good after all that heat in the legs, starting to melt down the back of that left leg, calf, hamstrings. Release, eventually bring that right foot back down. Taking your left leg up, keep the belly neutral. So we're aware of when we're rotating, and right now we're not rotating. As you look at that right heel, and kind of piston that heel a couple of times. A little more intention and stretch down the back of the right leg. And bring the foot down. Take your right leg right back up into the air. Roll up onto the tippy toes. Zip and curl. Step into the hands. Your left heel will turn as you animal walk the hands around to the left hand side. Notice how the outer blades of my feet are in line with the short sides of the mat, and you're just going to kind of liquid swim from side to side, and don't worry about straight lines just yet. As you shake off the spine and wiggle off the shoulders. And whether you come up with a flat back or whether you bounce through the knees and evolve through the spine, you're going to find your way up to standing. We're going to take the knees and the toes out to the side and just kind of dance the legs out a little bit as we head down towards goddess or horse stance. So the knees and the toes are doing the same thing. So now we're setting in rotation. And I want to talk about some isometric adduction and abduction. So even though both feet are planted, they can't go anywhere. I'm squeezing like I'm trying to slide my feet together. Feel the inner line of the legs let up. And then I'm spreading like I'm trying to spread them out apart. Feel the outer hips, outer head of the quads, glute medius slide up. So different people need to do one or the other, depending on if you need to figure out which one you're worse at and do that more. So I'm going to drive my feet apart, see how that feels. Squeeze the thighs in, see how that feels. And really ideally, you're going to find action in both, which will help keep your knee happy, make sure you're not just slouching on your skeleton. So now I've got some nice heat up through the thighs. I'm going to lift through the throat, high five out, sink into the legs, and experiment. Slide the feet into each other, even though you can't see any change from the outside, and slide the feet apart, even though you can't see any change from the outside. And just really make sure that you're lighting up everything, gently torching from the feet up to the shins, to the thighs and the core. Little micro movements, bringing more muscles online. Sink a little deeper. 3, 2, 1. Push the floor, peel it up. Turn your toes forward, outer blades of the feet in line. And from here I'm going to bend the knees and just rest on my thighs and explore the spine in contrast to the heated moments. Play with release as you arch and curl. And maybe instead of just cat-cowing here, you can twist a little bit and look over the left and over the right. And seriously, spacious, luxurious, just massaging and exploring little corners in the spine. Good. Melt down. come on down to wide-legged forward fold a little more properly. So the first time we folded forward, we were quite wiggly. But now as you're here, you're going to spread the toes, push through the heels, big toe, pinky toe. And I'm going to play with squeezing the feet together and then spreading them apart. Squeeze in, spread apart. Notice when you squeeze in, you're lifting the inner thighs to the core. Notice as you drive the mat apart, hopefully your glutes join in. So I'm really trying to use my glutes to flare my sit bones up and apart with that one. Sometimes that's a sleepy one for us. And see if you can find a way to do all of the above. So I'm both squeezing my feet together and I'm spreading my feet apart, if that makes sense. I'm isometrically hugging it all up. This will allow the spine to sink down a little further, maybe the legs to melt a little straighter. Hopefully your knee feels a little more supported. If you've got wiggly, hypermobile knees, all that isometric emphasis is going to feel really good. And gently animal walk back around towards the top of your mat. As you come forward, I'm going to play a little bit up on the fingertips, shorten the back foot in, and play with creating a straighter front leg. And I'm interested in, since I have so much awareness in the core, I'm going to square my tail back, really look for neutral hips, and rubber band the right leg a couple times. Whether it gets straight for you or not, it's all good. I like to keep my back heel in the air. If you want to diagonal the back foot for a more traditional pyramid, please do. Good. So I'm going to wrap my outer right hip back a little bit as I square, and then gently hollow down as I melt my forehead towards my shin. So I'm a little tight today. My shin's not, or my forehead's not hitting my shin today. Sometimes it does. But it's finding your always changing event horizon wherever your stretch is today is good. And from here I'm going to plant my hands. If possible, I'm going to push the floor hollow up through the core. If possible, I'm going to try to pick up my toes and suck my heel off the floor without losing that position. Very strong in the core. I'm going to keep the toes high up at the top of the mat as I can for 3, 2, 1. Kick that leg back up, three-legged dog. Pedal off the legs. Enjoy that heat. Use it to get longer. And take the left leg up. Roll and zip. Step into the hands. Spin around to the right hand side. Outer blades of the feet in line. Just take a moment to dance around. I'm going to turn so I'm not working away from you guys. And again, maybe it's a flat back. Maybe it's evolving up. Take your deliberately chosen path up. And this time again, I'm going to turn the knees and the toes out. I'm going to kind of wiggle and sink down into my goddess stance, into my horse stance. Up through the throat, high five out, big hands. Sink into the legs. So hopefully we've played with all that adducting, abducting. You're doing a bit of both. You've got this nice juicy springiness through the legs. You're no longer just overburning your quads and letting everything just passively hang. You're using your glutes. Using the core, nice strong zip straight up into the throat. Maybe you're sinking a little further in. Little micro adjustments, exploring, expanding. Using deep breath like air conditioning. And from here, I'm going to turn my fingers down. I'm either just going to gently push my knees away and rest away. So now this isn't fire burning in the thighs. This is a nice little adjustment, releasing into the hip mobility, into the groins, abductors. And if you feel good, you can kind of adjust your footprints as you sink towards more of a big wide squat. If you're feeling good, if your hips can get below your knees, you might bring your hands down, toes towards or fingers towards the ankles as you use your elbows to pry it out. I'm really making sure that my spine is nice and tall.
If your upper body curls in and you lose the length up through your throat, this might not be the variation for you today. You might stay up here. Either way, no matter where you wound up, I'm going to push the floor, gather back in, turn outer blades of the feet in line with the short sides of the mat. Lean down, just so that I can examine if my knees are collapsing in, making sure that I've got a solid footprint, balance through the knee, lift the sit bones, tip the spine down. Take your favorite variation of Prasarita Padottanasana. You might catch your big toes and draw the head towards the floor. You might lace your grip back behind you and use the action of the arms to deepen that fold down through the spine. But now as we with more intention pursue a deeper wide-legged forward fold, really make sure that you're inquiring that inner thigh, outer thigh conversation. Make sure you're using those nice big strong glutes to lift the pelvis, flare the sit bones up. Make sure you're also using the inner line of the legs to help collect up to the core. That two-way conversation will totally transform this pose. I'll melt it down. Come on up. And as you turn to the left-hand side, I'm going to animal walk around. Shorten my back foot in. Again, personally, I like to keep the heel in the air. You might drop it down to a pyramid. I'm up on the fingertips as I just rubber band this left leg a couple times. At the same time, squaring the pelvis, making sure my shoulders, my neck, the spine, the breath are all well cared for. And then head towards straight or fully expanded, however that is. If the knees is still bent, that's cool. I'm gonna hollow down, melt down. My forehead is dripping towards the shin. If it finds the shin, lovely. If not, that's lovely. Pouring it down, breathing. Breathing into the sensation of that stretch, how it is today. Good. And then from here, hopefully the hands are close enough to the ground that you can really plug in. Back heel up in the air might help you here. I'm going to zip the belly and really enforce this curl push in the floor. I'm going to lift my toes. And I'm going to see, can I levitate that foot and keep it up close? I'm really trying to bring my toes back up through my hands. This is tough going. For 3, 2, 1. And kick back up behind you. Pull off the legs. Way up on the tippy toes. Zip and roll through. All the way down to the floor. Strong or gentle. Loop the shoulders back, flatten out the feet, pull the heart through, lift long through the throat, upward dog. Push the floor, zip and dive back through the belly, past your pointed plank, on back to downward dog, wiggle out this dog. From this dog. We'll drop to a child's pose just for a second. Make sure there's space in this child's pose to kind of snake the spine from side to side. Notice the way that softens the outer hips as you lean into one hip and then the other. Now, depending on your knees and your ankles, you can lean into this as much or as little as feels good. Good. Come back to center in your child's pose. Keep the bum rooted nice and low. Sprout your fingers forward, forward, forward. I'm going to take both hands over to the left-hand side, keeping the bum low. And really, since I'm stretching my right-hand side, Right hand's further forward. I'm going to spider the right hand forward and drop the right ear towards the ground. It's like you're peering underneath the left armpit. I'm consciously using the breath to reach through that side of the rib cage. And then come on back. Square it up. Reach, reach, reach. Keep the bum low at the same time. And both hands come over to the right hand side. Since I'm stretching into the left, my left hand's going to keep creeping further. My left ear is going to melt down. I'm looking underneath my right arm. Constantly rolling it down, breathing into the left hand side. Good. Peel it up. We'll swivel around to sitting. I just wanted to hit off how that inner thigh, outer thigh conversation affects your back bends a little bit. You can, I won't do super advanced back bends today. If you're at home and you've got a stronger practice than what I'm offering, use this information for your stronger back bend. So I'm just here. I'm going to bring my hands 1, 2, 3 spaces back. And just roll the shoulders as we open in the opposite direction. And then really push down, look to straighten the arms, lift through the heart. I'm just going to keep the face forward for now. So this will become lifting into reverse tabletop, but first, while I'm here, and I'm just getting some exercise in the opposite direction from all those planks, I'm going to isometrically try to squeeze my feet together and then rip the mat apart. So you can see a little shift in my knees, but hopefully it's not a ton of Charleston. So this is not using my feet very well. My feet are going to stay plugged in, and I'm trying to slide my feet together. They can't because they're on the floor. And then I'm going to try to slide my feet away. They can't because they're on the floor. But as you play with those two conversations, you'll feel the inner line of the leg and then the outer line of the leg. You're just waking up all your options. And then from here, I'm going to reestablish the long arms, long spine. I'm going to push down, and as we lift into tabletop here, then same thing. I'm going to boost up from underneath. My feet try to slide together, but they can't go anywhere, and I'm not letting my knees collapse in. So it's not a shuffle of the knee. It's an activation of the feet, feeling the inner thighs lift to pelvic floor all the way up into the core. And then I'm going to slide the feet away from each other. And you'll feel the outer hips. You'll feel the glutes fire up behind you. Again, if your knees dance a whole lot, so you can watch that little shimmy as I shift gears. There's a little doot as I clutch and shift gears between adducting and abducting. But I'm managing to keep neutral the whole time. And this is a little nuance that I think a lot of us miss. And some people are stronger in the outer hips, some people are stronger in the inner thighs. And we want to make sure that we're using all of our resources well. Go ahead and release down. I'm going to bring the feet together and just bounce off the knees. Roll out the neck. Good. So I kept looking forward so I could really make sure my knees were tracking. But now that I have a sense of that proper action, we'll let the head drop back and settle more comfortably into a reverse tabletop. So I'm going to set the feet. 1, 2, 3. Set the hands back as I roll and roll. Push down, straight arms along spine. Step through those feet. See if you can both, as you let the head relax back, I'm both sliding the feet together and ripping them apart. If that makes sense, I'm using all of my resources, just like I'm using the quads and the glutes. I'm using the back of the thigh and the front of the thigh. And I'm using all of that to float higher up off the floor with more evenly activated power. And slowly unraveling down. And we'll come on down to the floor. I'm going to bring the knees into the chest for a second and just rock from side to side. Just playing. So options here. We'll do a little more spinal extension, but while we're here with the knees and the chest, option to either just draw your knees towards your armpits and rock from side to side, just play with the hips a little, or catch your big toes and draw the feet towards the sky as you rock from side to side, or grab your hands around the outer pinky toes, keeping the shins stacked to notice how my ankle is staying over my knees. I rock from side to side. Just playing with a happy baby as I might dip a knee to the floor on one side and then rock, dip a knee to the other side. Good. So with that intention of rocking and playing, I'm going to bring the feet down nice and wide. Palms out to the side, keeping the shoulders nice and broad. So toes can feel the edges of the mat as you tick-tock to the right and the left. Start to open up, creating twist, lengthening the hip flexors. Good. Bring the hands behind your head. I'm going to go palms up so my fingernails are on the floor. I'm going to bring my feet in pretty close, hip width apart, setting up a bridge. And even before my bum leaves the ground, I'm going to make sure that I'm squeezing the feet together and sliding them away from each other. So I'm waking up all my resources as I lift into a bridge here. My arms really aren't helping out at all because they're way back overhead. But I'm just feeling into all of my options, front, back, and sides of the legs, of the feet. And slowly rolling down and melting down one vertebrae at a time as we ease onto the floor. And come up to sitting just for a second, other than puppy pose. We did relatively little for the shoulders. So I'm going to take one arm and drop it down the back of my neck, and my head gets the right of way. So if this wants to happen, my head wings out. I'm going to draw it nice and tall, and my free hand is going to wrap the tricep in and then unplug like I'm trying to unplug my shoulder, and that'll hopefully reach me further back. And again, wrap it in, lift it and reach it back. I'm slowly creeping my hand higher up until my hand is up on my elbow. It's like I'm rotating a water tap as I reach it further back. You can sit however you want. If sitting cross-legged doesn't work for you. One more breath here. Let it go. And we'll switch sides. So I'll take my opposite hand just down the back of my neck. Notice how at first the elbow wants to pop out. Almost all of us need this adjustment. Wrapping the elbow in, wrapping the tricep as I say. And I'm going to use this hand to kind of unplug the shoulder a little bit, create some space to reach further back, and keep massaging that tricep around as I reach further back until eventually my hand winds up on top of my elbow and I roll it back. Nice and tall up through the throat, ground into the hips. Good. So here's a nice little preparation towards wheel. And if you don't do a wheel today, that's totally cool too. It'll still be useful. And just release it down, wiggle it out. So I'm going to let my hands just point at the back of the room. And my elbows are going to collect forward. So this is the same as having neutral legs. Yeah, I don't want to back bend like this. My knees are square. My elbows are going to be square too. And then from here, I'm just trying to raise my elbows as far as I can without letting them do this. This is challenging. Squeezing the elbows, raising the elbows, feel some nice heat in your deltoids. Notice how the neck is for you when you're here. Notice how if the elbows come out, you start to clamp into the neck. So swiveling those elbows in, raising them up. Fingers just point at the back of the room. And then I can start to straighten the elbows a couple of times. This alone, for me, I'm burning. This is challenging, just to keep the elbows forward and to work the arms a bit here. And notice how humble the range of motion is. Elbows are forward, raising up through the throat. And I'm only going to work as far as this doesn't happen. If this happens, I'm losing all my power. This is a ton of work, and this is what you need for your wheel. Because the body weight kind of forces you into more extension than you could naturally activate for most of us. So, whether you're going to wheel or not, I'm going to bring the feet in, and we're going to set up and bluff, even if you don't plan to lift. So, same shape, my elbows point at the ceiling. Maybe your wrists are floating. Maybe they're on the floor. It's all good. That depends on mobility. But I'm making sure that my elbows point at the ceiling. I'm making sure they don't do this. So elbows collect, and then you can just drive into a bridge and think about the balance in the legs. But now, notice the similarity in the limbs. If you drive up into a wheel, you're looking for the same balance in the arms as you've developed in the legs. So in your own time, you might just stay on the floor, pointing the elbows to the sky, or you might boost into a wheel. Stay for as long or as little as you like. I'm not going to count reps. You're going to stay as long as it suits you, as long as it feels good, as long as the challenge is welcome. And slowly retrace your steps. Ooze on down. As you vertebrae disc, vertebrae disc. I'm just going to chill out, making little W's with the arms. Notice the shape. It's like I'm painting my fingernails and drawing them down. Painting my fingernails across the floor as I draw the elbows down. So, totally up to you. You can also just head off in your own direction if you want. I'm going to play with one more wheel. You might just stay in a bridge thinking about the balance in the legs. If everything's feeling solid, continue that into balance with the arms. The head is free, the breath is spacious. You're both squeezing the feet together and spreading them out apart. You've got that same balance of conversation in the shoulders. In your own time, ease it on down. So if you feel ready to head off on a deeper back bend adventure, feel free to turn off the recording and follow your inspiration. If you're going to come with me down towards stillness, I'm going to make a couple more W's with the arms. Just leave the hands out as I take a few more windshield wipers with the legs. Slowly bringing the knees back into the chest as I rock from side to side. Just briefly, I'm going to take the hands to either side. I'm going to bring my tailbone to the left-hand edge of the mat. So notice how I look a little cattywampus, but then I'm going to roll into a twist, and this is going to feel way nicer because now I roll into the midline, rolling into a neutral spine, shoulders on the floor, knees together as we look over to the left-hand side. Really consciously assuming the left hip is on top, I'm going to bring the left knee down. So I'm going to squeeze that knee down, use the inner thigh, and really help to drop out this outer hip. gently come back up. I'm going to pick up my hips, bring my tail over to the right hand edge of the mat so you look a little out of kilter. But then as you roll in hopefully into a nicely placed twist. It's much softer on the spine. Easier to keep both shoulders on the floor as you look to the right hand side. I'm assuming the right leg is on top. I'm really drawing that knee down, consciously dropping my outer right hip. Bringing it back in. Take any little movements you'd like. Anything you wish before you settle down towards stillness. Making sure you feel balanced in your actions, integrated from head to toe. Wherever your arms are in the room, turn the palms up, dropping the activity of the hands. Let the feet roll out naturally. We're still down here on the fingers and the toes. Soften the hands and the feet. Continuing your awareness up through the ankles and the wrists. Up through the forearms and the shins. Up through the knees and the elbows. Up through the upper thighs and the upper arms. Up into the hip sockets and up into the shoulder girdle. Up into the pelvis, up into the rib cage. Running the length of the spine from the tailbone all the way up to the back of the throat, back of the neck, base of the skull. Soften the jaw, soften the head. And let go of the breath and just stay.